Good evening and welcome back to Capital Tonight, a statewide look at politics. I'm Tim Boyle. Well, education funding and teacher pay will likely reach the top of legislators' agenda this spring and summer. However, the way to fund and pay teachers will also create a fierce debate. Yesterday, I had the chance to talk with Republican Representative Craig Horn and Democrat Graig Meyer. We start with the issue of ending teacher tenure in the state. Gentlemen, welcome to the program in our Raleigh studio in the capital city. Good to see you. Thank you.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So let's start with the teacher tenure issue. We obviously know what the legislature has done. The governor signed the 25% will get four-year contracts and a pay raise. The rest will be phased out by 2018. Wake County this week became the 12th school district to basically say, we don't want to do this. Let's start with you, Representative Horn, since you're the Republican on board here. Do you have to start listing these districts and wondering if it was the right decision?
I think you always wonder if every decision is the right decision. You can't reheat old beans, but you've got to constantly reevaluate what you do and why you do it. New information comes forward all the time. You can learn from everyone. So yes, you always reevaluate, but by the same token, you can't just do nothing, afraid of whether you're going to make the wrong decision. Let's make a decision and move forward. The beauty of legislation is there's always a way to adjust. Maybe not immediately, but you learn. Keep your ears open, keep in touch, get a lot of input. God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. There was a lesson there.
So are you concerned about this, I mean? Are you willing to reevaluate the law that was passed?
Absolutely. I'm willing to reevaluate anything. I reevaluate every vote I make just to make sure, did I really do what I thought? Did I really cast an informed vote? I think I did, but I want to make sure. So I go back and look at everything I do. Does the legislature need to reevaluate the teacher pay, tenure, performance pay issue? Absolutely. No one's yet come up with a perfect system. Maybe this is not the system for North Carolina, but maybe it is.
Representative Meyer, Senator Berger, if he was sitting here, would say, not all professions have these special protections, and if you're a good teacher, you shouldn't be concerned. What do you say to that?
Well, I just heard from one of the school districts in the area that I serve this morning, and they went ahead and offered the new 4-year contract to a couple hundred of their teachers, and 95% of the teachers that they offered it to turned it down. And to me, the fundamental problem with creating this idea was that there weren't teachers involved in deciding how to proceed on it. And so if we want to do things better in public education, let's draw those people who are the most involved and the real experts in.
So you mentioned teacher pay. Let's go to that subject, because that's obviously going to be the highlight of the session likely, or the lead story, if you will. Yeah. The governor and Republican leadership has said they're going to start with the early pay, 7% average over 2 years for those folks, roughly 42,000 out of the 99 some odd thousand teachers that we have in the state. The rest is wait and see. You're an appropriations budget writer on the education side, so you get to deal with the rest of wait and see.
Comes squarely on my plate.
We got about a month left here. I mean, what do you think about this? I mean, what is the possibilities, or is it still completely unknown?
Well, to say it's unknown is probably not totally true, but do we have the facts and figures at the moment? Not yet. We'll be getting those numbers as we move into April. We can't spend money we don't have. That's not good fiscal management. But the teacher pay raise for new teachers is a step. It is a first step. I believe it's only a step. I think the governor actually did say that more than once. Mm-hmm. I personally believe, after months of getting into the weeds to the greatest extent possible, that the #1 priority in education for successful education model for us in this state is to keep high quality teachers in the classroom. Now, that starts with ensuring the ones that we have stay there, and then it ensures the new ones that come in, the high quality ones, stay there as well. So when we, and I mean we, the legislators and the governor's office got groups of teachers together across the state, we heard time after time after time that it was that beginning cohort, that 1 to 7 year cohort, that had the highest turnover. That we had to do something to stop the bleeding. So let's get that done. Let's take that step, and then let's get right to work on what's the next step and do what we can afford to do and do it quickly.
Can you take the Republicans for the word at that? That is a first step. I know a lot of people have made a big deal that they're ignoring the rest, but they do say it's a first step. So do you take them at their word for that?
Well, I think there's pretty broad consensus that boosting new teacher pay is the most important first step to do. But we haven't seen any consensus from the Republican leadership that they can decide on what the second step should be. And walking around North Carolina and talking to people, it's pretty clear that North Carolinians agree that teachers need a raise across the board. But from Republican leadership, we hear that there probably is not going to be an across-the-board raise. There's going to be some other type of incentive-based plan, and we don't really know what that looks like yet.
A lot of options on the table on the Republican side?
Of course there's a lot of options on the table. We don't know what the income picture is going to do. Are we going to have sufficient money to do all the things that we want to do? Oh, well, no is the answer. We're not going to have sufficient money to do everything we want to do. So what are we going to have? We need to ensure that we make sound judgments, spend our money wisely, not drag this state into debt, and certainly, in my view, not raise taxes for the simple reason that people poorer. More poor people pay taxes than rich people pay taxes. So I don't know about anybody else, but when I drive to Raleigh, I drive through a lot of little towns, and I'm just heartbroken at the number of boarded up businesses, people walking the streets, riding around in the middle of the day that should be employed, and I believe want to be employed. We've got to get those people back to work. That solves a lot of problems. So before I start spending more money, I want to make sure the money I have is spent wisely. So how much money do I have? I don't know. When I know, I'll be spending it.
We'll be waiting. What do you say to that? That we can't spend more than we have? I know there are some Democrats that would like to raise more money to help pay for that. I mean, where do you kind of sit on that?
Well, I think there's a lot of educational things that Representative Horn and I agree on. We have some great conversations about some things that we can do that don't cost a lot of money. But as a Democrat, we have some fundamental disagreements with the Republicans' approach to taxation. And unfortunately, the tax cut that they gave really just made a lot of rich people richer. And if you want to take poor people and move them out of poverty, I believe the most important thing to do is to help them get an education. And I believe most North Carolinians agree that we should invest in education for our children. So I think we'd have a different approach.
So how do we break through that divide when one party always seems to be in charge and one isn't?
I think the way we break through the divide is exactly what was just said, and that is we agree on a lot of things. Let's work on those things we agree on. And while we're doing that, we start picking off a little bit of this and a little bit of that on where we have some disagreements. And pretty soon we're going to find that we agree on almost everything. We're never going to agree on everything. We have fundamental differences of opinion on how government should work and what the role of government should be. And that's a good thing. If the two of us agreed on everything, one of us is nuts. So we need
Some might argue we're all nuts.
Well, and that's based on valid information too. But we need to ensure that we engage the public and each other in productive conversation, not in finger pointing and throwing them under the bus, but in productive conversations. I think we can agree on what the objectives are. I think we can agree on where we're going. And we might have, and I think we certainly will have different ideas on how we get there. That's a good thing. Let's involve each other and the public in a good, stern, open discussion.
All right, so we're almost out of time, but what he's saying sounds good, and I'm sure you agree with that. Do you feel like that can be done with all parties and all people in charge of parties?
We have a consensus, all North Carolinians, no matter what party they're from, that providing a great education to every child requires a great educator in the classroom. So the debate is about how do we get those great educators, retain them, and respect them. And part of that is compensation, but it goes beyond that. And so that's what we need to talk about. And we need the public and we need educators themselves to have their voices heard so that we make good decisions about that in Raleigh.
Well, gentlemen, this will play out through the legislative session, no doubt about that. In the meantime, thanks for coming in and talking about it. Good to see you both.
Thanks very much for having us.